Okay, thank you. So just to give you a little bit of background about my project to start with. So I'm sure many of you are aware that there are some significant challenges around the long-term retention of veterinary nurses within clinical practice. And with this in mind, there is a necessity for graduate veterinary nurses to have the motivation to seek employment in clinical practice upon graduation. So with this in mind, I wanted to investigate actually what motivated my final year students' plans for post-graduation, with the view to then be able to support future students actually to have the motivation to then seek employment within clinical practice. So I addressed the research question around how the values and beliefs of final year students on a BSc Honours veterinary nursing programme actually impacted their desire to seek future employment in the veterinary nursing industry. I used a motivational theory called the situated expectancy value theory as a framework for my research. So this is a theory that was originally published in the 80s, but was actually republished in 2020, and it was this revised version that I actually refer to. So within this, a very small part of this theory are the subjective task values, and it was these that I used as my framework. And essentially, a person requires some of these subjective task values in order to create motivation. And if they have too much of the perceived cost, they are then demotivated. So intrinsic value relates to the enjoyment of a task, utility value, the usefulness, attainment value is the importance that a person perceives with that task, and then the perceived cost would then be the demotivator, and that's any detriment the person perceives they might encounter due to engaging in that task. So in terms of the method, it was a qualitative case study design with a single point of data collection. I used online semi-structured interviews with 10 final year student veterinary nurse participants, and these included some mature students and also a male veterinary nurse as well, or the 9 other participants all identified as female. I then analysed my data using thematic analysis. I had 5 main themes that you can see up on the screen there. And I then used the situated expectancy value theory and the subjective task values to then interpret the data. So in terms of the values that the students identified, the intrinsic subjective task value was very evident in the things that they shared. So all of these students had completed a 1-year placement and were in their final year around 6 months from graduating. So very much thinking about what they were going to do for their careers. And they were very much sharing this sort of love for the job role itself, so demonstrating that intrinsic value. And you can see that through the quote from student 2 there around having this love for veterinary nursing itself and wanting to get back out into the profession. This is a common finding within research, as well as some of my own research published earlier this year, for intrinsic value to be a reason for people to actually commence a particular activity. So other values demonstrated did relate to attainment value. So this is around the importance that the participants perceived they would have by participating in the veterinary nursing job role. And a shared value was very much promoting health and welfare of animals, as you would expect from veterinary nursing students. It was also really evident this sort of sense of pride and sense of belonging within the veterinary nursing profession. And the quote from student 9 there quite nicely sums that up. It was also clear that students were linking their professional and their personal identities. So they were very much demonstrating that they share values with the values of the veterinary nursing profession. And this has links to then the development of self-efficacy, which is a very positive thing in terms of the person's perceived importance. Now, in terms of their beliefs, so the participants luckily held the belief that their veterinary nursing degree would equip them with the skills they required for their veterinary nursing careers. So that's then attributed to the utility, subjective task values. And a lot of the participants had considered further study in the veterinary nursing field. Now some actually planned to use their veterinary nursing degree as a stepping stone, and they literally use this term, stepping stone. And some of them, so student 8, which is the third quote down, actually talked about wanting to do something greater than veterinary nursing, which I found kind of quite thought-provoking, really. And this is also evident in human nursing research. So the paper there, McRae, Askey, Jones and Laker, looked at human mental health nurses and also found that it was common to be used as a stepping stone, and also using the term something greater as if the nursing profession on its own, they weren't perceiving that as enough. And although I talked earlier about this kind of development of professional identity, this sort of sparked the idea that perhaps actually that is something we need a bit more of in veterinary nursing, so has then inspired a future research project of mine. Participants actually all discussed future career aspirations, apart from one. So one of them, Student 7, didn't talk about this kind of desire to leave and do something else. All other participants did, which I did find, I suppose, sort of disappointing in a way, because these students have not even graduated and they're already thinking about what they're going to do in the future. So you'll see their veterinary nursing lecturer appears quite often. I interviewed them, and I'm a veterinary nursing lecturer, so we could say perhaps there was some influence there as to why that one appears so often. But the stepping stone careers were highlighted as RSPCA officer and veterinary surgeon were the careers they were perceiving as sort of greater, something they were working towards. Canine hydrotherapist was actually highlighted as being something that would be less pressure than veterinary nursing. So that, and you'll see on my next slide, some of them were identifying that veterinary nursing was actually quite high pressure, and they wanted to do something with less pressure, which they were perceiving could be hydrotherapy. So I was actually in a way pleased that my participants were very happy to openly discuss their anxieties relating to their future career plans, which I think could be attributed to sort of a possible culture shift, really, around their sort of happily talking openly about their concerns. These are obviously attributed to the perceived cost. So this is the detriment that my participants believe they could encounter by engaging in a veterinary nursing career. So the demanding nature of the profession was highlighted, and you can see student 3, the middle quote, talked about future career plans and actually how that wouldn't really fit very well with a long-term veterinary nursing career, and they perceived that as a barrier for the longevity of their career. The emotional strain was linked to reduction in motivation, and student 9 actually talked quite a lot about euthanasia and how that's something that they wanted to avoid when they went back into practice as an RVN. And this could be seen in a couple of ways. So it could be seen as sort of protective buffering, where this person's sort of shutting down, avoiding it, doesn't want to talk about it. And that's sort of discussed a bit by Winterheld 2017. Or it could be seen in a different way as actually trying to protect one's mental health and stay within their emotional comfort zone. So it would have been interesting to explore that more, but it could kind of be seen in both ways. Low pay was also highlighted as a career-limiting factor as well by my participants. So, in general, the participants did highlight these high levels of intrinsic and attainment value in relation to key aspects of the veterinary nursing job role. And it was really nice to see the positivity in terms of personal and professional value alignment. However, there were many perceived costs that were discussed. And sort of as I said earlier, it was quite in a way nice to see the willingness of the participants to talk about those things, and perhaps that could be attributed to a culture shift. And I think very much that's something that we should continue to nurture. So within colleges and universities, I think we need to continue to nurture this culture of openness, so providing wellbeing support for student veterinary nurses so that as they progress through their careers, they can actually maintain that motivation to have a long-term career and to seek support as required. Thank you very much.